The war on immigration documentation just escalated to a shocking new level. And what happened outside Terminal Island in Los Angeles is sending shockwaves through communities nationwide. We're talking about the violent arrest of a U.S. citizen nurse who was simply exercising her constitutional right to document federal agents. This isn't just another immigration story. This is about the systematic targeting of American citizens who dare to hold their government accountable. So what exactly happened, and why is this case exposing a much darker pattern of federal overreach? To understand the gravity of this situation, we need to look at what's been unfolding across America since the current administration took power. Immigration raids have intensified dramatically.
Depot near MacArthur Park on Wednesday. More than a dozen people were detained outside the store on Wilshire Boulevard in the Westlake area in an operation they called Trojan Horse, according to the Department of Homeland Security. They went on to say, quote, Border Patrol conducted a targeted raid that resulted in the arrest of 16 illegal aliens from Guatemala, Mexico, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Video from News Chopper 4 also showed a Penske moving truck at the operation. Penske Trucking Company later released a statement saying in part it strictly prohibits the transportation of people in the cargo area of its vehicles, and they were not made aware that its trucks would be used and did not authorize this.
The scale and scope of these operations have reached unprecedented levels, with federal agents conducting sweeps in parking lots, workplaces, and communities across the nation. But what makes this different is the coordinated effort to silence those who document these operations. We're seeing a pattern emerge where community advocates, many of them U.S. citizens, are being swept up in what can only be described as retaliatory arrests. The statistics are staggering. ICE has faced widespread backlash over arrests of community advocates documenting raids across the country. These aren't random encounters. These are targeted operations designed to intimidate and silence grassroots resistance.
Home Depot parking lot in Los Angeles, called Operation Trojan Horse, is generating renewed backlash against the Trump administration's crackdown on illegal immigration.
Several agents got out from the back of the truck and started grabbing people.
This worker was able to flee, but 16 others, including his brother, were detained and transported in the back of a moving truck.
This is something that is not acceptable, and we are not going to stand for it in Los Angeles.
A judge in July ordered federal officials to stop indiscriminate sweeps in Southern California, saying there was evidence that some arrests had been based on people's race or ethnicity, their mere presence in a location, their occupation, or the fact they were speaking Spanish or English with an accent.
The tactics being employed represent a fundamental shift in how enforcement agencies operate, with agents hiding in moving trucks and using deceptive methods to conduct arrests. Enter Amanda Trebach, a registered nurse who works in Watts, Compton, and South Central Los Angeles. She's not a criminal. She's not an immigration violator. She's a U.S. citizen and healthcare professional who was participating in what's called a peace patrol outside Terminal Island. But Terminal Island isn't just any location. It's a Coast Guard base that ICE and Customs and Border Protection use as a staging area to prepare and deploy agents for raids across California. Community volunteers have been routinely stationed outside this facility to monitor federal vehicles streaming in and out.
Where we met school librarian Sharon Nichols and her neighbors.
I'm not an activist. We're all just regular people.
They've made their local Home Depot a top priority. It's called Adopt a Corner. They're here every morning providing day laborers with information and watching out for ICE agents.
We have vulnerable people standing out here, and we need to protect everybody in our community.
So you're in it for the long haul?
Yeah, absolutely.
Home Depots have become a hotbed for immigration raids, so residents have vowed to remain a constant presence at dozens of locations across LA County. As the protests move from large gatherings downtown to smaller rallies in the suburbs.
Okay, we can do a little line through the inside.
We're not expecting this to happen, so the Home Depot management has allowed the protesters to come through the store.
Across Los Angeles County, ordinary citizens have taken it upon themselves to stand watch at locations known for immigration enforcement activity, providing information and support to vulnerable communities. They're exercising their First Amendment rights to observe and document government operations. What happened to Trebach on Friday morning, August 8th, exposes the true nature of federal enforcement tactics. Around 6 a.m., 4 to 6 unidentified masked agents violently detained and arrested her while she was on community patrol. The footage is disturbing. Two plainclothes, masked agents pin her against the pavement as they kneel on her back to handcuff her. One agent is seen putting his knee on Trebok's head as witnesses yell for him to get off. The audio captures her repeatedly screaming for them to get off her, while agents bark orders at witnesses to back away. This is happening to a U.S. citizen on public property. Federal agents claim Trebok was arrested for impeding and obstructing federal law enforcement. Their official statement alleges she jumped in front of moving vehicles, hit cars with signs and fists, and physically blocked agents from completing their duties. But witnesses tell a completely different story. According to Unión del Barrio, the community group Trebok was working with, she never broke any laws. She was documenting the movements of federal agents, as is her constitutional right. She never threatened or assaulted anyone. Community members describe agents charging at her, causing her to drop her poster, then claiming she attacked them with it. The discrepancies in these accounts reveal a troubling pattern. Federal agents are increasingly providing false or misleading information in official records to justify arrests of community advocates.
Congressman Chris DeLuzio of Fox Chapel wants answers about what happened at the end of July when federal agents took people into ICE custody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Ken Rice.
And I'm Christine Sorensen. DeLuzio says transparency is lacking. KDK's Lauren Linder has details from Ambridge.
The Beaver County District Attorney tells me federal immigration officers detained 12 people here in Ambridge last week. It's information a congressman says he sought from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement directly, to no avail.
Where are you taking him?
A masked federal immigration officer takes a man into custody as bystanders ask questions and voice their views.
You just split up a family.
This was the night of July 31st in Ambridge, a borough represented by Democratic U.S. Congressman Chris DeLuzio. He says he and his office have posed basic questions to ICE for weeks regarding this and other operations in the region and have yet to receive any answers.
Even members of Congress are finding it impossible to get basic information about federal operations in their own districts, with agencies refusing to provide transparency about their activities despite repeated inquiries from elected officials. A recent investigation by The Guardian found that immigration enforcement agents made demonstrably false statements in their reports about several protesters arrested during mass demonstrations in Los Angeles. This isn't Trebok's first encounter with federal agents either. According to community organizers, she had reported an earlier incident on August 4th when Border Patrol agents allegedly tried to box her car in near Terminal Island after she documented a caravan arriving from a workplace raid. The targeting appears deliberate and systematic. What makes this case particularly significant is the location's historical context. Terminal Island was once a thriving Japanese-American fishing village that was demolished during World War II, its residents forcibly sent to internment camps. Now it's being used as a staging ground for modern-day mass deportation operations, with federal agents arresting those who dare to bear witness. The community response was immediate and powerful. News of Trebok's detention spread quickly, prompting rallies outside the federal detention center in downtown Los Angeles. Demonstrators gathered Friday evening demanding her release, with protests continuing through the weekend. The pressure worked. After intense community mobilization, Trebok was released Saturday evening without criminal charges, but the implications of her arrest extend far beyond one individual case. This represents a coordinated federal strategy to criminalize documentation and resistance to immigration enforcement. We're seeing similar patterns across the country. In Los Angeles alone, federal agents have embarked on what can only be described as a militarized rampage since June. Pursuing daily quotas of arrests, agents have ripped through predominantly Latino cities and neighborhoods. They're conducting roving patrols without warrants, abducting day laborers, street vendors, car wash workers, and others in their dragnet. Despite claims of targeting violent criminals, the vast majority of those detained don't have criminal records. This hasn't stopped the government from deploying violence against unarmed individuals, many of them U.S. citizens. The tactics are shocking and represent a stark departure from previous norms. Federal agents are using excessive force, tackling people to the ground, shattering car windows to yank people out. They're operating with impunity, knowing that their actions are being protected at the highest levels of government. The criminalization of protest and documentation is escalating. Earlier this month, a federal grand jury indicted a man simply for handing out face shields to people protesting ICE operations. Alejandro Orellana was charged with conspiracy to aid and abet civil disorders for distributing protective equipment, advertised as designed to protect from chemical splashes and flying debris. This is the new reality. Providing safety equipment to protesters is now being treated as a federal crime. The message is clear: resist at your own peril. But the resistance continues. Organizations like Unión del Barrio, the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, and National Nurses United are fighting back. They've filed class action lawsuits challenging the legality of Southern California's immigration sweeps, which they describe as looking less like lawful arrests and more like brazen, midday kidnappings. These lawsuits are requesting injunctions that would halt warrantless arrests, require agents to identify themselves while making arrests, ensure due process rights, and guarantee those detained have access to attorneys. Similar injunctions have been granted in other jurisdictions, proving that federal overreach can be challenged in court. The nursing community has rallied around Trebach's case. National Nurses United, representing 225,000 registered nurses nationwide, condemned her detention and called for immediate release and full dismissal of all charges. They're refusing to stand by while their patients and community members are caught in what they call the dragnet of cruel deportation schemes. Healthcare professionals are pointing out that community engagement, including monitoring public law enforcement activities, is often an extension of their role in addressing broader social determinants of health. The American Nurses Association has noted that advocacy doesn't end at the bedside, but includes wider engagement with social issues affecting patient populations. The broader implications are terrifying. We're witnessing the systematic dismantling of constitutional protections under the guise of immigration enforcement. The right to document government operations, the right to peaceful protest, the right to provide mutual aid, all of these fundamental freedoms are under attack. Federal agents are operating with military-style tactics in civilian communities. They're using smoke devices, flashbangs, and coordinated raids that terrorize entire neighborhoods. Children are staying home from school, people are avoiding doctor's appointments, businesses are suffering as communities live in fear. The economic and social costs are enormous. ICE data shows a dramatic shift in enforcement tactics between red and blue states. In Democratic-leaning states, community arrests have increased dramatically, while arrests in Republican states more often occur in jails or prisons. This isn't coincidental. It's a deliberate strategy to punish states and cities that refuse to cooperate with mass deportation efforts. The administration is using immigration enforcement as a political weapon against jurisdictions that don't align with their agenda. They're targeting sanctuary cities and states with aggressive tactics designed to instill fear and force compliance. The human cost is staggering. Families are being torn apart, communities are being traumatized, and constitutional rights are being trampled. U.S. citizens are being arrested for exercising their First Amendment rights, while federal agents operate with virtual impunity. But there's hope in the resistance. Community organizations are adapting their tactics, using technology to coordinate rapid response networks. They're training volunteers in know your rights protocols and legal observation techniques. They're building solidarity across racial and ethnic lines, recognizing that an attack on one community is an attack on all. Legal challenges are mounting. Civil rights organizations are filing lawsuits at unprecedented rates, challenging everything from warrantless arrests to the use of excessive force. Courts are beginning to push back, granting injunctions and ruling against federal overreach. The fight for documentation rights is particularly crucial. The ability to record government operations is fundamental to democratic accountability. When federal agents operate in darkness with masks and unmarked vehicles, they're avoiding the transparency that democracy requires. Community documentarians like Trebach are performing a vital public service. They're creating records of government actions that can be used in court, shared with media, and preserved for historical accountability. Their work is protected by the First Amendment, and attempts to criminalize it represent a direct assault on constitutional principles. The stakes couldn't be higher. We're at a crossroads where the fundamental character of American democracy is being tested. Will we allow federal agents to operate without oversight or accountability? Will we permit the criminalization of constitutional rights in the name of immigration enforcement? The answer lies in our collective response. Communities like those supporting Trebach are showing the way forward. Through organized resistance, legal challenges, and unwavering commitment to constitutional principles, they're fighting back against authoritarian tactics. The release of Amanda Trebach without charges represents a victory, but it's just one battle in a much larger war. The forces that arrested her remain in power, the tactics that terrorize communities continue, and the assault on constitutional rights shows no signs of slowing. What happened at Terminal Island is a warning. Federal agents are willing to arrest U.S. citizens for exercising their constitutional rights. They're willing to use violence against healthcare professionals who serve vulnerable communities. They're willing to lie in official reports to justify their actions. The question is, what are we willing to do about it? The community response to Trebach's arrest shows the power of organized resistance. When people come together, when they demand accountability, when they refuse to be intimidated, they can achieve results. Her release proves that federal overreach can be challenged and defeated, but this victory came at a cost. Trebach was subjected to violence, detention, and trauma simply for doing what Americans have always done, holding their government accountable. The fact that she was released without charges proves the arrest was unjustified from the beginning. This is the reality we're facing, a government that arrests first and asks questions later. Federal agents who operate with military tactics in civilian communities. A system that treats constitutional rights as obstacles to be overcome rather than principles to be protected. The fight continues. In courtrooms and communities, in the streets, and in the halls of power, people are resisting. They're documenting, they're organizing, they're refusing to be silent in the face of injustice. Amanda Trebach's story is one of courage in the face of intimidation. Her willingness to document federal operations, despite the personal risk, exemplifies the spirit of resistance that democracy requires. Her release represents hope that accountability is still possible. The broader struggle for immigrant rights, constitutional protections, and democratic accountability continues. Every person who documents government operations, every lawyer who files a lawsuit, every nurse who speaks out, every community member who refuses to be intimidated, they're all part of a movement that refuses to let democracy die in darkness. The Terminal Island arrest exposed the true nature of current federal enforcement tactics. But it also revealed the power of community resistance. When people stand together, when they demand justice, when they refuse to accept the unacceptable, change is possible. This is just the beginning. The forces of authoritarianism are powerful, but the forces of democracy are stronger. The question is whether enough people will stand up, speak out, and fight back before it's too late. Amanda Trebach did her part. She documented, she resisted, she paid a price for her courage. Now it's up to the rest of us to continue the fight. Because in the end, democracy isn't a spectator sport. It requires participation, it demands courage, and it needs people willing to document the truth, no matter the consequences.